Hello everyone and welcome to the blog. My name is Adam Josh and this is episode 92. I think I'm going to call this one The Gods Aren't Vegan. And I'm sitting in my car again. I'm sitting in a cemetery, actually, one of my favorite places to come and meditate and be quiet. I was born in 1981, born an indigo. You can look up how somebody becomes an indigo according to their astrological chart. Usually they say the planets are all on one side. Now with the whole is the Earth flat, are there planets thing, I mean, what does astrology even mean anymore? Nobody knows. I want to keep this to 15 minutes or less. So anyway, I'm sitting in a cemetery. And I noticed looking around me, there's a lot of crosses. If you ever go to a cemetery, you'll see a lot of people as they die. They decide to put pictures of baby Jesus and crosses. This guy over here next to me, Chalmers, has the gravity symbol, the golden, for the Freemasons. I noticed in the last video I did a lot of signs. I wasn't really trying to do the 666 thing. I'm just trying to, sometimes when I get in a teaching mode, I want to do the Bill Clinton thumb thing, or I do this. I don't know why I do that. So I'm not trying to do any intentional things. Sometimes I talk with my hands, sometimes I don't. In this video, I'll try to just, I'm just being myself, really, to be honest. And you'll notice that one of the reasons you'll notice that I don't allow comments in the videos. And one of the reasons I do that is because I'm not doing YouTube videos for money. I'm not monetizing any of the videos, and I haven't. And I don't plan on monetizing any of the videos. So I have a job. I am well taken care of in that regard. I have a career. I have kids that I'm raising vegan. So I'm occupied. I don't have time to go through YouTube video comments. So if people want to reach me, they can email me, adam@adamjosh.com, or they can follow my Twitter account and contact me there. So I'm trying to keep this video to about 15 minutes, but I wanted to sort of elaborate on the last video and talk about how not only is the God of the Bible, the God of the Torah, and the God of the Quran a mass murderer of humans, but he's also a mass murderer of animals. And people who know me know that I'm a vegan. People who follow along know that I've been vegan for a while. I've been vegan for about 4 years, and I was vegetarian prior to that for about 3 years. And while opening up our second chicken restaurant, I decided after a dream to go vegan. I had the dream August 15th, 2013, and then I woke up from that dream just a changed person after the dream. I don't know if you've ever had a dream that has changed you, but I have a lot of crazy dreams, and I'm not unfamiliar with having weird dreams, so I've documented a lot of that on my website. So back to this God not being a vegan thing, and the gods of the Bible, the God of the Quran, the God of the Jewish Torah and Tanakh, first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, are what's called the Torah. In Judaism, there's also the Tanakh, and then as far as Islam goes, there's the Quran, and then there's the Hadith, and you can get into reading a lot of Hadith. So in this particular channel that you're on, I did, in 2010, a video called A Job 1, the pilot webisode, and I was originally calling this the Adam Josh Oral Brog. Later called it just the Brog. So in the first video, I'm reading the Quran itself, and I just finished up reading it, I think, and now since then I've read it 2 more times, and that's 7 years ago. So I've read the Quran and the Hadith, many Hadith. It's like an encyclopedia's worth of information about different companions of the Prophet Muhammad and the things that were reported that he and his companions said and how they lived and documented. So when I talk about Islam, or when I talk about Judaism, or when I talk about Christianity, or the Bible college that I am a first-year graduate of, I don't try to say things in an arrogant way, but you'll notice that I do speak with some authority. And I speak with that authority because of the things that I've lived through and because of who I am as a person. And I'm not going to apologize for that, and it is what it is, and I am who I am. I'm not trying to hide under a rock, and I'm not in a corner anywhere, but this is what it is. So, the God of the Bible, the God of the Quran, the God of Judaism is a mass murderer, and there's no two ways about it. And if you didn't get that from the last video, let me emphasize it again, that I'm not just saying that. It is matter of fact, and you can do a body count if you want in your spare time. Go on Google and just type in body count, the God of the Bible, to see who has mass murdered more people, Hitler, Mao Zedong, or the God of the Bible. And in the last video I didn't really talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. That's another great example. All the amount of people that King David had slain. I mean, I could go on and on and on. The book of Revelation is literally sending people to hellfire and then turning the lake of fire and hell over to death and throwing it in. Everything there's the first resurrection, the second resurrection. And, I mean, we could talk about a bunch of different things, but I wanted to keep today's topic to veganism, really, and just kind of prove from the three main faiths that God isn't vegan. So I don't have any notes or anything written down, but like I said, after studying as much as I have over the years, this stuff is kind of just milling around in my head, and I would love to sort of live my life unaffected by how you live yours. And people, my colleagues and people who work with me and people who know me kind of don't understand why I get frustrated and why I waste so much time on making videos and trying to get people to like wake up and seek the truth. And I guess if I could be some other person, then I would do it. But despite my many flaws and many personality quirks, under all the layers of everything else you see on Twitter and the YouTube, is a person who genuinely just wants people to wake up and question authority and question things and not be slaves. And if you are a believer in the God of the Bible, if you're a believer in the God of Judaism or in the God of Islam, there's no two ways about it. You're a slave to a mass murderer, and you're giving your power away to an entity that is not worthy of it, and you should take your power back. So the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, if you have your Bible handy or your Torah handy, open up the book of Leviticus and turn to chapter 11, and you'll see that the God of the Bible is talking about what is clean and unclean and fit for the children of Israel, the group of Israel to eat, his children to eat. And he has the foresight, the God of the Bible, first of all, this was penned by Moses, and this is a whole other topic to get into. Moses was raised in Egypt and could mimic a lot of the Egyptian magi tricks. So it's a whole other big debate to get into. When Moses left Egypt, did he actually steal some ancient technology, and that's how he was able to perform the quote-unquote miracles of the food in the desert and the water and the splitting of the Red Sea? So that's a whole other debate for another thing. Like this was my life for a long time, just studying this stuff. But for today, I want to kind of keep it to veganism. But so you'll see that God in the book of Leviticus has the foresight to differentiate between different types of land animals and cloven hoof and split hoof, and animals and certain insects. Okay, you can eat these insects, you can't eat those insects. You can eat cows, but you can't eat pigs, and they're unclean to you, right? So God has the foresight to differentiate. So one argument would be like, well, God intended everybody to be vegan because the Garden of Eden was, and the diet that Adam and Eve had, her name wasn't Eve, the diet that these two people had was a fruitarian, vegetarian diet. And then because of sin, they had to offer animal sacrifices and yada, yada, yada. That's one argument. I'm just going to tell you right up front that I think it's all bogus, that God, the God of the Bible, his modus operandi in general is a mass murderer, and he doesn't seem to care about animals, because later you'll see in the book of Exodus, and you'll see when the temple's actually built, when Solomon, David's son, actually builds the temple that was later destroyed in 70 AD, that Yeshua would have been walking around this temple, and the whole system around it, it centers around animal sacrifices. So the God of the Bible isn't just a mass murderer of people, but he institutionalized the murder of animals, the systematic destruction of animal lives as well. And he didn't just ask for animal sacrifices to himself to atone for sin, but he also had recommended to the whole children of Israel to eat a non-vegan diet. So the God of the Bible doesn't just not care about human lives, but he's also saying, kill all these animals institutionally. And right now you can look up the templeinstitute.org. There's actually groups that want to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, where Al-Aqsa Mosque is right now, what's called the Dome of the Rock. And if they get their way, it's going to be a really bad situation. I've written about it on my website, but regardless, if they get their way, they would rebuild the temple and reinstitute animal sacrifices. So in the Quran, you can look up surah, which is their word for chapter 2, chapter 5, and chapter 16, or surah 2, surah 5, and surah 16, and look through those, and you'll see that the Quran actually builds upon the foundation of the Torah and confirms it. And you'll find a lot of that in the Quran, where the angel Gabriel is dictating to Muhammad, and Muhammad is reading out this Arabic poem. Basically, it's all the Quran in the original language is like poetry. I'm not a big fan of the Arabic language, but if you were a fan of the Arabic language and you were listening to the Quran in its tongue, then you would maybe find it to be poetry. And so it's really hard for the Western mind to understand the Quran, because you're looking for chapter and verse, which is another actual fallacy. When Moses was penning things, he wasn't penning it, okay, chapter 1, verse 1. This is something that was added later. So, a lot to get into, and I'm sorry that I go off on bunny trails sometimes, but this is what happens of years of studying this stuff for fun and as my education. So I could just ramble on for hours and hours and hours. But anyway, so the God of the Quran we were talking about in Surah 2, Surah 5, Surah 16, he builds on, this is the angel Gabriel talking to Muhammad, who then has his friends penned it down, because Muhammad himself is illiterate, and that's the miracle of the Quran, is that the angel Gabriel recited it to Muhammad, and then Muhammad didn't pen it down. He verbally recited it to his followers, who then wrote it or penned it down. So Muhammad himself is an illiterate former merchant. No conflicts of interest there, but side story. So the God of Islam, Allah, is building on the Torah, saying you shall not eat these animals, and then you can eat these animals. But fun fact, an halal diet is a lot like a kosher diet, but there are vast differences. Like all lobster, crab, and shellfish are not kosher, but anything that comes out of the sea, according to Islam, is kosher. Is halal. They have their own word for it. It's called halal. So, whereas a Jewish person wouldn't sit down and eat a lobster, a Muslim will. So you see there's differences. And so, the God of the Quran and the God of the Torah are both not vegan. They both encourage that you go out and eat defenseless poor animals. So, the God of the Bible and the God of the Quran isn't just a mass murderer of people, which I talked about in my last video. But the God of the Quran and the God of the Bible and the God of Judaism also is a mass murderer of animals. So God isn't vegan. You need to wake up. You need to take your power back. And if you're talking about some other God that you've made up in your head, then you're making up an idol. And there's lots of gods in that, we can just make up then. Sure.